You've heard the term Banana Republic. You've probably used it to describe a corrupt, unstable country. But do you know why? Do you know where that term actually comes from? It comes from a real company, a real massacre the US government helped cover up, and a secret war fought over the fruit you eat every week. This is the history lesson you were never taught in school. The yellow fruit sitting innocently in your kitchen helped topple democratically elected governments, sparked military interventions, and created a system of corporate terrorism so ruthless that it makes today's worst monopolies look like corner stores. You're about to discover why the banana isn't just a fruit, it's the blood-soaked symbol of corporate America's darkest chapter. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at your breakfast the same way again. It's 1871. Miner Cooper Keith, a 23-year-old Brooklyn kid, steps off a boat in Costa Rica to help his uncle build a railroad through impenetrable jungle. He has no idea he's about to create a corporate monster that will devour entire nations. The Costa Rican Railroad project is a death trap. We're talking about carving through disease-infested rainforest where malaria, yellow fever, and dysentery kill workers faster than they can be replaced. Keith watches 4,000 people die building just the first 25 miles of track, including his own 3 brothers. But here's where Keith shows his true nature. When local workers flee in terror, he doesn't abandon the project. He imports Italian immigrants with promises of wealth, then Chinese laborers, then 700 convicts from New Orleans prisons. Out of those 700 criminals, only 25 survive. Keith is literally feeding human beings into a meat grinder to lay railroad tracks. To feed his disposable workforce cheaply, Keith plants bananas along the railroad. It's supposed to be just worker food, but when he ships the excess fruit back to New Orleans on returning supply boats, something clicks. By 1871, banana imports to the U.S. are worth $250,000. By 1900, they're worth $6.4 million. By 1910, they've doubled again. In 1884, Keith strikes what becomes known as the deal of the century. Costa Rica's government is bankrupt from the railroad project, so Keith offers to complete it for free. In exchange, he wants 800,000 acres of tax-free land, that's 6% of the entire country, plus a 99-year lease to operate the railroad and control of Puerto Limon port. The desperate government says yes. Keith doesn't just own land now. He owns a country's transportation system, its main port, and enough territory to build his own nation within a nation. Keith merges his operation with Andrew Preston's Boston Fruit Company to create the United Fruit Company. Within a month, they've absorbed 7 Honduran banana companies. By 1930, United Fruit controls 75% of banana imports to America and owns 3.5 million acres across Central America and the Caribbean. But here's what makes United Fruit different from other companies. They don't just sell bananas. They become the shadow government of multiple nations simultaneously. Picture this monopolistic machine. United Fruit owns the plantations, the railroads, the ports, the telegraph networks, and the shipping fleet. They create their own postal service in Guatemala. They build their own hospitals, schools, and housing for workers. They even establish the Tropical Radio and Telegraph Company to communicate with ships worldwide. Their Great White Fleet becomes the largest private navy in the world, with over 100 vessels that don't just carry bananas, they transport weapons, supplies, and political influence across the hemisphere. But the most sinister part, United Fruit discovers they can control entire countries more cheaply than they can buy land fairly. They start bribing officials, installing puppet presidents, and turning sovereign nations into what American writer O. Henry coins banana republics. Workers on United Fruit plantations live in conditions that are unbearable. They work 14-hour days, sometimes extending to 24 hours during harvest rushes, for wages paid in company scrip that can only be spent at company stores where prices are inflated 300 to 400%. There are no safety protections, no workers' compensation, no legal rights. Workers are classified as contractors rather than employees to deny them even basic labor protections. By 1928, United Fruit employs over 30,000 workers in Colombia alone. These aren't just jobs, they're a system of legal slavery disguised as employment. November 12, 1928, 25,000 banana workers in Colombia have had enough. They present 9 simple demands to United Fruit, recognition as actual employees rather than contractors, payment in real money instead of company vouchers, 6-day work weeks, compensation for workplace accidents, basic hygiene in dormitories, collective insurance, improved hospital services, abolition of company stores, and wage increases for those earning less than 100 pesos monthly. These aren't radical demands. These are basic human rights that factory workers in America already enjoy. United Fruit's response: complete refusal to negotiate. They immediately activate their propaganda machine, portraying the strike as a communist threat in cables to U.S. Secretary of State Frank Kellogg. Here's the terrifying part. The U.S. government responds by positioning Marine Corps vessels off Colombia's coast and threatening invasion if the Colombian government doesn't crush the strike. Think about this logic. American workers can organize, strike, and demand fair wages, but when Colombian workers want the same basic dignity, the U.S. military threatens to invade their country. Faced with potential American invasion and economic destruction, Colombia's President Miguel Abadía Méndez declares martial law on December 5, 1928, and sends 700 troops under General Carlos Cortés Vargas to the Banana region. December 6, 1928, Sunday morning, workers and their families gather in Cienagá's main square after church services, expecting to hear from the regional governor about their demands. Children play in the square while mothers hold babies. It's supposed to be a peaceful assembly. Instead, General Cortés Vargas positions machine guns on rooftops at each corner of the square. At 1:30 p.m., he gives the crowd 5 minutes to disperse. Many refuse to believe soldiers would fire on civilians. Others are physically trapped by the crowd's density. When the 5 minutes expire, the machine guns open fire on unarmed men, women, and children packed into the square. The exact death toll will never be known, and that's by design. Official Colombian sources claim as few as 47 deaths. U.S. Ambassador Jefferson Caffrey privately reports to Washington that the total number of strikers killed by the Colombian military exceeded 1,000. Other estimates range as high as 2,000, but here's the horrifying truth: the bodies vanish. Survivors report that corpses are loaded onto the same trains that normally carry bananas and transported to mass graves or dumped in the ocean. The Colombian government issues orders that the massacre never happened and that the workers did not exist. The cover-up is so thorough that the massacre barely registers in U.S. media. Strike leader Raúl Mejecha has to travel throughout South America telling his story because no one will publish accounts of what United Fruit and the Colombian military did. But one person is listening. A young boy named Gabriel Garcia Marquez grows up hearing survivors' testimonies. Decades later, he immortalizes the massacre in 100 Years of Solitude, writing of officials declaring that nothing has happened, the workers did not exist. His novel becomes the only historical record most people ever encounter of United Fruit's bloodbath. Meanwhile, United Fruit faces zero consequences. The company doesn't pay damages, doesn't face prosecution, doesn't even issue an apology. Instead, they simply move operations to other countries and continue business as usual. The machine guns in Cienaga Square aren't an aberration. They're the logical conclusion of a system that values corporate profits over human life. But United Fruit's appetite for blood is just getting started. By the 1950s, they've perfected the art of toppling governments that threaten their profits. Meet Edward Bernays, Sigmund Freud's nephew and the father of public relations. United Fruit pays him over $100,000 annually, equivalent to nearly $1.27 million today, not just to sell bananas but to sell an entire worldview. Bernays creates front groups like the Middle America Information Bureau, establishes networks of spies across Central America, and systematically manipulates American media to portray any threat to United Fruit as communist infiltration. He doesn't just do public relations, he does psychological warfare. Guatemala's democratically elected president, Jacobo Arbenz, implements land reform that would redistribute United Fruit's unused holdings to landless peasants. The compensation would be based on the tax-assessed values United Fruit itself had declared, values deliberately kept low to avoid taxes. Bernays launches a propaganda blitz that convinces major American publications that Guatemala is a Soviet beachhead. Meanwhile, the CIA arms Guatemalan exile Carlos Castillo Armas with weapons and trains his forces at United Fruit plantations in Honduras. On June 27, 1954, Arbenz resigns after CIA psychological warfare convinces him he faces massive popular uprising. In reality, Armas commands only a few hundred men, but CIA radio broadcasts create the illusion of revolution. The coup succeeds. Armas immediately restores United Fruit's land holdings, and Guatemala descends into a civil war that lasts 36 years and kills 200,000 people, all because United Fruit didn't want to pay fair compensation for unused land. One company, one propaganda campaign, 200,000 dead. So the next time you grab a Chiquita banana, the company United Fruit became, remember this: you're holding the legacy of machine guns in Colombian squares, and a business model that literally fed human beings into death machines to lay railroad tracks. United Fruit didn't just sell bananas, they sold the idea that corporate profits matter more even in the face of human dignity, that companies can destroy foreign democracies. The banana workers who died in Ciénaga weren't asking for revolution. They wanted to be paid in real money instead of company scrip. They wanted 6-day work weeks instead of endless shifts. They wanted basic medical care when machinery crushed their limbs. For these modest demands, United Fruit responded with machine guns, and they faced zero consequences. The sweetest fruit has always come with the bitterest price. That price is still being paid today, by Colombian families whose grandparents were murdered for wanting basic dignity, by countries still recovering from CIA coups, and by a world that learned corporate power can override democracy itself. What other everyday products are hiding histories this dark? This is just one of the many stories we will bring you. Hit subscribe and find out more, because once you see how deep these corporate tentacles reach, you will not only be surprised, you will be shocked. The Banana Republic was never about the banana. It was always about the Republic and those who control it.